Hello everybody and welcome to the Great Guild Wars 2 Countdown. There are only 17 or 14 days remaining till the launch of Guild Wars 2, depending on whether you have pre-purchased or not, or you are in the head start. The footage in the background comes from TSL LOLs Gaming, so thank you very much to them for that. They've got a mixed bag of Guild Wars 2 stuff. I'll probably be putting up some PvP. I'm almost tempted to do the end event thing. I believe that's the second beta weekend event there that they've got at the end. But the thing is, I feel like that's one thing you might have noticed on my channel actually. I've not really put up myself or any of those. I feel like that's the kind of thing that actually loads of people have ended up doing, and I know we've seen that on daily quite often, so I'll try and avoid putting up actual end event stuff. If you guys do disagree with that and you'd like to see more, like particularly the Hunger Games thing is actually kind of cool, and I like to see different perspectives of that and how long people lasted until they died, and I almost put up my own video of that in fact, but I didn't in the end. So if you would like to see that, let me know, but for now I'll avoid it. We'll have some PvP and the Ice Shaman boss in the Nornland, so that should be pretty cool. But you can find the rest of their videos on a link in the description down below. Not much news for today. In fact, I've only got one real topic, and even that's not a great topic. But as I mentioned quite recently, ArenaNet have shifted the focus of their Guild Wars 2 website. It has gone through a redesign. It is being repurposed for suiting a game that has actually been released and has a thriving community and that people are currently playing, rather than a website about a game that isn't launched yet. And they are slowly changing that. The main way, I suppose, ArenaNet have been contacting us, the community, I guess, for news themselves, has been through their blog, which to me is kind of weird because it hasn't always existed, the ArenaNet blog, and it doesn't feel like it was that long ago they started it, but you look at it now and actually it's got quite an archive. They're actually moving a lot of the topics that appear on that blog over to the Guild Wars 2 website, so that's really when you're going to be going for your primary news about Guild Wars 2 from here on. Guild Wars 1 news, though, as that game does continue to be developed on and things do happen there, will remain on the ArenaNet blog, and things more about ArenaNet for themselves will also be there on that original blog, so it still exists, but the main news stuff now you will find right there on guildwars2.com, which is quite coal, and that was a change they made actually a couple of days ago. Anyway, I've got a few questions for today. Might be a bit of a shorter countdown episode because yesterday, as you all know, the stress test happened. I hope you all had fun in it. It was very late at night for me and Mike, but we did stay out the whole way through it. We filmed some more, would you believe it, jumping puzzle stuff. We did the one in Gendaran Fields though, which I wasn't actually aware about until very recently, and we were dramatically underleveled. So if you were actually following me on Twitter yesterday, you probably had the opportunity, if you'd seen me tweet, to actually come in game and be in a video. So that should be quite a cool thing we'll have coming out soon, where it's actually us and loads of you guys, the viewers, actually playing together. And just to clarify this, I've got a lot of plans for when Guild Wars 2 launches. It's not going to end with the countdown for me. I've got a lot of plans, and one of those, a main idea that I'm toying with, is a kind of a weekly series thing where we actually can all meet up, because Guild Wars 2 is so easy to let people just play together in certain bits of content. I'd love to do focuses on certain meta events where we will be able to meet up and play together, and you guys can actually be in the video. So I'm quite excited about that idea. That will probably be arranged through Twitter, so not to haul my own Twitter out or anything, but it will actually be there in the description if you want to check that out for today. Oh, also, as well, before the questions, another thing that I wanted to mention that I forgot and somebody reminded me about, that Twitch stream that the World Builders did the other day, Ree and Jeff, when they came and spoke. I didn't mention everything they said. There was one other thing that I thought was really cool that I've talked about. It's a topic I've addressed a couple of times on Daily that seemed a bit up in the air, but they've actually come out with a rather solid answer for now, and that's the idea of the fiery dragon swords that exist in Guild Wars 1 and what's actually happening with them. So I've been asked before, what does this mean? In Guild Wars 2 we've got this lore that talks about two fiery dragon swords in particular that were gifts to Ascalon, and it was through these two swords that the foe fire was triggered, and the idea is only when the two swords are brought back together in Ascalon then the foe fire will then subdue. But in Guild Wars 1 there were loads of swords that look just like this, and a common question that is asked and thrown around is, well, are only two of them significant, or what about all these other swords? Do they just not exist? What's the lore there? They actually came out with an answer to this and said pretty much all those other swords were replicas. So if that's something you've ever wondered, that is the answer now, and I felt like I should probably say that, because again, I think it's come up at least 3 times on different videos at certain points. I've never really had a great answer because they hadn't given one, but now they have. They're replicas of Sahothin and Magdea. The real swords, they're kind of replicas of it, and that's why in Guild Wars 2 as well, if you have a certain amount of points in your Hall of Monuments from Guild Wars 1, you'll actually be able to get one of these things back, which is really cool. So there is that. Anyway, right, to the questions. The first one is from Sephiroth67890, who said, "Hi WP, can you tell me more about the home instance, a personalised home area located in your character's racial capital? I don't hear a lot about this part of the game and hoped you know more about it." This is a feature that I'm a bit disappointed in, actually. From what we've seen in the betas, at least, it doesn't seem like it's going to live up to what we originally thought it was going to. The personalized instance, to explain it if you've never heard of it before, the idea is that there are two different parts of the PvE experience in Guild Wars 2. You have the generic running around exploring, completing events and stuff, where your actions have some consequence to the world, but only for a short amount of time, because eventually that event will re-roll around. And then you have the idea of the personal story, which is this long campaign, essentially. It's the actual plot, the storyline. It will start off with you as a character coming from humble beginnings, no doubt, leading eventually to the defeat of Zhaitan, this long thread that will have you travel throughout the world and meet different characters and make decisions. And the idea in Guild Wars 2 is this full storyline, this main plot, is very personal to you, and choices you make there have permanent consequences. So out in the world, when you're not in the personal story, you'll make decisions and you'll have an impact on stuff, but for a while you'll have lasting impact on the world. But in the personal story, you have a permanent impact. If you choose to have one character die and another survive, then that is a permanent change. So it actually means that the decisions and the choices you make have real consequence in the personal story. How do they achieve this? How do they give players some permanence in an MMO where everyone needs to be able to experience the content? Well, they do it through this idea of the home instance. What this means is within your signature city, as you say here, you will have a huge area of the city that is 100% instance to you. Now, you can bring your friends into it if they're in your party, and they can come and visit your personal instance and see how your decisions that you made throughout the storyline have affected it in comparison to theirs. But it is your own area, and it is kind of instance and away from the persistence of the rest of the in-game world. And don't get the wrong idea either. These are very large places. If you've been in the game and seen it, you know, an entire district of Divinity's Reach is dedicated entirely to this idea that one of them is your home instance. And as I say, the idea was that this would be an area where decisions you make, the consequences are laid bare. So the idea is, if you were to have the hospital burned down and not the orphanage, then in your home instance the hospital is forevermore burned down, and you're supposed to feel bad about that. But to me, it seems like this doesn't actually mean as much as maybe ArenaNet first wanted it to. It seems that as the personal story will progress, we're not necessarily going to be coming back to the home instance as much as maybe we should. So, you know, you might make this decision early on, oh no, I've let this character die or something. But if the personal story never really takes you back there or encourages you to go back there all the time, then why do you care? Because you're not going to see that very often, because you're just not going to be in that area of the world. So it doesn't really matter what actions you've made, because no one's really going to care. I think a lot of people also get mixed up, and it's very important to make this understood that the personal instance is not player housing. It's not a player housing system like you might find in other MMOs, where you can decorate and you can add things, you can give yourself a garage and you can give yourself an extra floor and you can plant flowers and stuff. It's nothing like that. Although in theory it would work with that as a part of it, it is not player housing. Not necessarily. I mean, your character might have a house within there, but it's not about customizing your house at the moment. A long time ago, ArenaNet mentioned in interviews that they would toy with the idea of eventually expanding the personal instance into something like this. But for now, it looks like kind of one of those features they talked a lot about early on, and now you say in your question, oh, I haven't really heard much about this recently. And I think that's true. I think maybe ArenaNet have been a bit more quiet about it, because it hasn't ended up this amazing thing that I think a lot of us had the impression it might have been at first. Be curious to see how significant the personal instance really does end up being. But I'll tell you one thing, I don't like the idea of the entire personal story constantly having us rubber band across the world, going back to our home instance. Back to Queensdale, alright, now I'm going back to Orr for the next quest, and now I'm going all the way back to Queensdale for the next, and then all the way back, and then all the... You know, it's just not going to work. I don't like that idea. So I'll be curious to see how ArenaNet sort that out and make that happen. Will there be other personal instances further on in the story, in other small instance sections of the world? Maybe. I mean, in one way, that's what the dungeons are. In an odd way, the story modes of the dungeons kind of achieve that. But we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, they certainly haven't spoken about it so much, and it's my hunch that it's because the home instance isn't going to be such a large or pivotal part of the game as some people might be expecting. So that's just my opinions on it anyway. The next question is from TSL LOL. Wait, is this the same guy that's giving me footage today? If it is, that's a total coincidence. Anyway, he says, hey WP, so in some of the more recent Guild Wars dailies, you went into a lot of interesting details concerning the Sylvari personal story and lore, and it really got me interested in playing a Sylvari. Before the betas started, I was most excited to roll a Norn Thief, but after playing the betas, the Norn basically became my second least interesting race in the game. The main reason behind this is they really don't feel like they have much lore behind them. I get that Jormag made them flee to the south and that they want to defeat him, but that's it. I know they worship the 4 animal spirits and there's this spiritual world with the Havarans and stuff, but is that all there is to them? Or have I just missed out on something big because the only Guild Wars 1 game I didn't play at all was Eye of the North? I was hoping that you could get me more interested in them like you did after revealing some stuff about Kaith and the Nightmare Corps. It doesn't seem like they have any conspiracy going on like the Char have the Flame Legion, and the Norn just feel pretty empty for me, personal, story and lore-wise, compared to some of the other races, and it really put me off rolling a Norn Thief as a main, along with them being so damn big, which is kind of a handicap in PvP, especially as the Thief if you think about it. I haven't really spent much time in betas playing as a Norn, but I have spent time around the Norn areas. One thing that seems quite interesting to me that they hadn't really talked about until I got in game, and there seems to be this angle on the Norn, is the idea there is some legend about some Norn hero or something that is going to rise up and shatter the tooth, and we knew about this idea that the Norn fled south, but they actually got Jormag's tooth. Well, there's this whole legend that eventually someone will break it, and that will usher in a new age and stuff for the Norn. That seems kind of interesting. You can speak to a lot of NPCs that talk about that kind of stuff, but I think you're kind of right in a way that maybe it wouldn't be I wouldn't be the best person at exciting you about the Norn, because I personally am not that excited about the Norn, and I don't know really what that says about the race when someone like me that does know, a fair bit about the world still isn't really that excited about them. I would say the one thing about the Norn is that they have a lot of culture, but they don't have a lot of history or a lot of lore behind them. And by that I mean, ArenaNet were trying very hard to make all 5 races feel very distinct, right? I guess that's primarily what they were trying to do. They were trying to make all the races feel very different from one another, and that was just as important for the Norn as it was for anyone else. In fact, in some regards, I'd say it's even more important that the Norn have a really distinct culture, because they can be drawn so closely to the humans, because they just look like big humans to people new to the story, and that's totally a fair way that people were originally look at it. So it's very important that the Norn have something that makes them feel distinct, and I'd say that out of all 5 races, the Norn have got the most interesting culture, and they've got the most to their culture, and ArenaNet seem to have put the most time and effort into that, and you can even see that. You say you didn't play Eye of the North, you can definitely see that in Eye of the North. The Norn are very unique, and they have a lot about their culture, about the way that they name things, about their nomadic ways, how they don't like to group together in certain ways, how they take on life, and how they just want to have big fights and make a legend for themselves, and how they want to be remembered. And they are a really kind of thickly cultured race, but beyond that, they don't have much in the way of like significance for lore or history. I think the main problem is that they don't have much. We don't know much about them before we met them in Eye of the North, and we still don't to this day. We just kind of heard, oh right, out in these remote areas of these Shiver Peaks, there was this race of guys called the Norn, right, and they were always here. But we don't know what they were doing years and years and years ago. And now that Guild Wars 2 is releasing, primarily we're just going to be getting history and backstory between the 250 years after the first game anyway. We're not really hearing that much before it. The most interesting stuff when it comes to the Norn is when you bring the Kodan into the picture, and the Kodan's belief on how the Norn are really just fallen Kodan. And if some of those ideas are true, these legends that the Kodan have, that many years ago there was a great blizzard and some Kodan chose to go south years and years and years ago, and eventually they became the Norn. If that kind of stuff's true, then that's what's most interesting about the Norn to me in lore. This idea that they did come from the Kodan, and this weird kind of uneasy, I suppose, allegiance that they now have with the Kodan, and how they'll be interacting with one another in Guild Wars 2. But beyond that, really, for thick, mysterious lore stuff, the Norn don't have that much. I kind of like that in a way, though, because if you were to speak to a Norn in Guild Wars Interior, if you were Interior and you spoke to a Norn, they're not the kind of race that have been painted to care about that kind of thing themselves. So I love that the idea is they probably do have quite a lot of history, but we don't hear much of it ourselves because the Norn don't care for it. It's just kind of lost for them. And obviously that's not to say no Norn ever would care about that kind of thing, but it's just not really in their culture. So that's the way I look at the Norn. They have got a lot going for them, and they are very unique, and in that way ArenaNet have been very successful at crafting the Norn race. I feel like they do add something to Guild Wars 2, and if you're playing as a Norn, it will feel very different to playing as the other races. But that's the main difference. That's the way I look at them. They've got a lot of culture. In comparison to the other races, I'd say they have the most culture out of any of them. But out of of history and mystery and lore and intrigue, they've probably got the least. There's this whole idea of the spirit world, as you mentioned, and the Havrons, but we kind of already know what there is to know about that, and that's very similar thematically to things we've been seeing going on elsewhere in the universe, which again I like. I like that there are these same themes and things cropping up across all the cultures and stuff. I talked about that before, how all these threads probably tying together at some point, but that also leaves them without much distinction in that regard for the intrigue and the mystery. I don't think that the Norn should be viewed negatively for it though. Not everyone at the end of the day is super into these really kind of bigger questions about the universe, and they'll probably just be interested in playing a massive guy that loves to drink alcohol and kick the shit out of stuff, and for them they have got the Norn. The Norn do serve a purpose in that regard. I guess it's just the kind of character you want to play and the kind of player I suppose you are. They are good for the game, definitely, and I wouldn't expect them to be that low played. They're not too high on my list for excitement of who I want to play as, but I don't think they're actually as low as possible. In fact, very interestingly, a couple of weeks ago I found out that actually the Char are the least scheduled to be, at least from people who are participating in polls and stuff at the moment, the Char are the least likely to be played. Like, the least amount of people are going to be playing as Char, which is a really weird thought, considering I would have put them as one of the highest, especially for players of Guild Wars 1 would love to be a Char. Surely, at some point, they'd love to be. But that doesn't seem to be the way it's panned out, and I guess we'll just see what happens in-game. But, you know, if Norn do end up as the underdog race, then even that, in some weird way, is a virtue, because everyone wants to be, at least in some way, the underdog race, right? You don't want to hear that you're playing the most popular and the most overplayed thing. So, I mean, no matter where they go, I don't think that they can go too wrong with it. I'll end it up with a theory someone sent me the other day, which I really liked. This was from Grimsy42, or just Grimsy, who said, "Hi WP, I've got a question for you. In the Hall of the Heroes in Guild Wars 1, there were quite a few statues around of golden people with butterfly wings. Do you think these have any relation to the Largos that we've seen in Guild Wars 2? That's a good theory. I really, really like this idea. So one of the mysterious things that we've been putting together for a long time is there is a certain type of architecture that exists in Guild Wars 1. You can find it in the Hall of Ascension, and you can find it in the Mists at the Hall of the Heroes. It's really kind of golden, otherworldly looking stuff, right? And there are all these big statues, and in particular there's this recurring statue you see of these creatures with some weird wings, and we've kind of wondered who was it that built these areas, and what are these statues that they're building? Are they statues of the architects of the place, or are they statues of something else? Are they related to the gods somehow? And there have often been a lot of theories about, you know, the couple of winged gods, Melandru's winged, Dwayna's winged. Are these gods, are these the race that these gods once existed as a part of? Are these winged things, are they the gods before they became gods? And there have been a lot of theories about the Harpies as well, which there's lore that suggests Harpies in Guild Wars are actually a fallen race as well, a little bit like the Jotun. They're a fallen race, and what were they before that? Were they these golden, winged, beautiful creatures? Maybe they were. I mean, that's kind of a cool idea for Harpies. But now we, because Guild Wars 2 is coming closer and there's more things being introduced, this is what I love that kind of blew my mind a little bit. Now we can look at stuff like the Largos, these mysterious assassins from out in the deep waters that have come to certain areas of Tyria and are really seem like quite a rare sight. I believe that I've only seen or heard of one in the betas. It's pretty crazy. Are these Largos the Harpy things? That would be great. I would love that. I would absolutely love that, and I hope ArenaNet are continuing to think about these kind of weird architectural things that we were ruminating over in Guild Wars 1, and maybe they are the Largos. What a cool idea. I love that theory. So yeah, just wanted to end on that one, guys. Thank you very much for watching the Great Guild Wars 2 Countdown, and I guess I will see you tomorrow. The jumping puzzles, by the way, will probably start coming out daily from now on, because me and Mike, we've just got so many of them. I want to have them all out before launch. And funny enough, actually, I was featured, if you will, or TB mentioned me on the Game Station podcast. So if you're watching me and you've just come from that, then hi, welcome to my little corner of YouTube. We do a daily thing here, and there'll be more jumping puzzles. So if that's what you saw over there on the podcast, there will be a lot more. Don't worry about that. So yeah, thanks very much, guys, and I guess I will see you tomorrow. Have a great day.